So recently, me and my cousins sat down and decided to make a tier list for some bad animated movies, because we found a copy of Shark Tale lying around our house. In total, we watched 6 movies that I'm going to make a video about, because why not? Starting off with Shark Tale. Now, I had never seen this movie before last week, and I had always thought that people really liked this movie until about 3 months ago when I found out that it wasn't that well received, which honestly really made me want to watch it because I wanted to see what all the commotion was about. Now, I had no expectations going into this movie, but man, I gotta say, it wasn't the best. We start out with Will Smith rapping and promoting graffiti while he's getting ready to go to work. Once he arrives, we're introduced to the main love interest, whose name I instantly forgot. Anyways, Oscar friend-zones her, and then Oscar yaps about how he wants to be a famous fish. He doesn't want to be a nobody. So when a shark dies right next to him, he makes up the story that he killed the shark. He's now named the Shark Slayer, and is a local celebrity, which everyone loves. And then he starts dating a gold digger and gets caught up in fame. The shark named Lenny, who is also Jack Black, is the brother of the shark that got killed earlier. Oscar fake kills him for a publicity stunt. Lenny paints himself as a dolphin, has dinner with a bunch of sharks, dumps the gold digger lady, and then gets with Angie. This movie wasn't that good, but it also wasn't terrible. The shading's sort of off, some things don't make sense, and there's a giant Coca-Cola ad. I'll give this movie a 3.5 out of 10 and a D tier. Next up is Alvin and the Chipmunks, the first movie. Now, this movie isn't necessarily bad, but critics aren't the biggest fan, so we decided to rewatch it. I think you all know the story by now. Dave is a failing musician who finds chipmunks outside of his window one night, lets them live with him. They make a certified hood classic. They get signed to a record deal. The chipmunks get taken away from Dave and start touring with Ian Hawke, the best character ever written in cinema history.
This is absurd. I feel like P. Diddy with fur.
And Theodore gets even more chubbier. This movie is a classic. Nothing groundbreaking, but it's still a really fun watch. 6.5 out of 10, B tier. Next up is the freakiest film on this list, The Nut Job. Will Arnett's in this movie, and he plays a squirrel named Surly. Can I just add that all the character designs in this movie are so boring? It looks like they just rendered the most boring average squirrel ever and called it a day. The animation in this movie isn't bad. All the human characters in this movie look like they're coming straight from a mobile game. Anyways, the plot of this movie is this park trying to get nuts for winter. Surly, the main character, doesn't help the park at all, so he gets kicked out. Surly's selfish and has cooperation issues, so he's trying to get all the nuts for himself. Okay, pause. Him and this rat find this nut shop. The owner of the nut shop gets back from jail and plans to rob a bank. Yeah, I don't know either. The plot of this movie lost me, really quickly. The squirrel and the rat break in, get a bunch of nuts, meet a dog. The people who were trying to rob a bank got arrested. Surly learns how to share, sort of. And then the movie's over and we get the end credits. Still giving it a 5 out of 10 and putting it in C tier. Hold on, be right back.
Yo, what up? I'm James the Animation Man, and I watched Over the Hedge. This movie is fire. You got 3 main characters, RJ, Hammy, and Vern. The rest of them I don't really care about, so we're not going to talk about them. The animation style of this movie is so funny. You can grab any frame from the entire movie and make a meme out of it. Legitimately, the only bad thing I can think about of this movie is this stupid Karen lady. I hate her so much. This is definitely a new certified hood classic. 8.5 out of 10. A tier.
The next movie we watched is Hoodwinked, which I always thought that people absolutely hated, but didn't. People actually somewhat liked this movie. Now, I gotta say, I did too. The animation in this movie isn't great, but you do get used to it. Or at least I did. The plot of this film is a crime interrogation. After this granny's house was broken into, this movie's heavily fairy tale based, by the way. There's obviously Little Red Riding Hood. There's freaking Joe Swanson as a wolf. And this lumberjack who sells schnitzel. This movie had a really refreshing plot that I wasn't used to. It parodies cop TV shows, and there's a singing goat. This movie's pretty overlooked in my opinion. Although it's not perfect, it's a great movie for an $8 million budget. And with all those good things that I just said about it, me putting it in C tier may be a little weird. Still really good. Please watch this movie. It's very ahead of its time. Now we have Food Fight. This movie, in short terms, is just god-awful. From what I've heard, this movie took over a decade to make, had a budget of $65 million, and only did $70,000 in its entire box office. And this movie came out in 2012. This is no joke, the worst animation that I have ever laid eyes on. This movie takes place in a grocery store with this dog who's a cereal mascot wanting to propose to this cat lady who sells raisins. But the raisin lady gets recalled, and now this detective dog cereal dude goes undercover looking for her with his best friend who craps out of his ears.
You were my sunshine, my only sunshine. You made me happy when sky.
There's this company called Brand X that's trying to take over most of the stuff in the grocery store. Pretty much just rebranded, I think. The guy who runs this company is just tweaking out 24/7 because he walks and looks like this. He's also voiced by Christopher Lloyd. Somebody please tell me who tricked him to be in this movie. He does not deserve this. Anyways, a war breaks out and the dog drops the best bar ever in cinema history.
Cream them!
I forget what happens after that. This lady looks 150 years old. And then the movie's over. This film is going in S tier. No, I'm just kidding. This movie's going in negative F tier. Get in the bin. And the last movie that we have for today is Norm of the North, which has a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes and had 3 movies made after it. Why? I don't know. This movie's about this polar bear Norm who can talk to humans. Someone builds a model home in Antarctica, and Norm goes to New York. He gets casted for the role of a polar bear, and everyone's just oblivious to the fact that he actually is one. Everyone is quick to fall in love with Norm, and he's just being used as an ad so that this company can start building homes in Antarctica. Norm's completely on board with the mission, then he's not. The switch up was crazy and a little confusing. Norm finds his long-lost grandfather, almost drowns while trying to go back to Antarctica, gets married, and then starts throwing it back. This movie had a decent message about saving wildlife, and it kept me pretty entertained while I was watching it, but it was sort of hard to put my thoughts together because this movie was really forgettable. It wasn't as bad as people say it was, though. 6 out of 10. I'm debating whether I should give it a really low B tier or a high C tier, because I didn't hate this movie that much. Don't at me. Hello there. How was the video? Comment your thoughts on it. Yeah. Haven't done an endcard in a while. I always felt like I just yapped way too much, so I sort of stopped doing them, but I'm back and I'm gonna try not to do that. Okay, thank you to James the Animation Man for watching Over the Hedge and giving his brief thoughts on it. Thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I don't know, give me your ranking of these movies in the comments maybe. What?